It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
In Fairfield County, something new comes across my desk every day. Crimes are committed, cases are solved, and a community is made safe by the hardworking employees of the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phelan, a weekly program here on LSN Television. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners. We're also carried by a number of the radio affiliates here in Lancaster and beyond. Behind the scenes, Kelly Roberts, our executive producer, and the students here at Fairfield Christian Academy that actually put this program together, and they do a terrific job. Backed by popular demand, second week in a row, is Dave Landefeld, the soon-to-be municipal court judge, coming up January.
That's correct, and thanks for having me back.
Well, it's good to see you, and for the folks that may have missed last week's program, the former prosecutor here in Fairfield County for 30 years, and did a terrific job. And last week we were talking about all the relationships and all the people you got to know over those years.
Sure. It's been wonderful. I still get to see a number of friends who were in law enforcement. Unfortunately, all these deputies and all of the LPD officers, boy, they're getting young.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Well, in fact, this morning we actually swore in a new deputy, and I was telling Kelly that the mom looked like a kid. So that's amazing to me.
I feel that now too.
Yeah, there's just something about it, like a deputy or a police officer that was born now in the 90s. I mean,
exactly.
There's something funny about that.
Yeah, I want to say it's not really frightening, but it just makes me realize how old I am.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, last week we talked a bit about a little bit about your background, and I think this is going to be a great program because we're going to talk today about some of the most memorable cases that you had in 30 years, and certainly we couldn't get this in one program, but Kelly and you have kind of highlighted some cases that kind of come to mind.
Right, and the one that always has stood out, there's two that have always stood out, and for different reasons. The first one is Officer Brett Markwood's murder. That was something that I'll never forget. It happened on early Sunday morning. I was called that he had been shot in the face, and after a robbery, and it was just devastating.
And you knew Officer Markwood?
I knew Officer Markwood. In fact, Maureen Markwood, his widow, went to law school and ultimately was an assistant prosecuting attorney before she relocated to Florida, where I still maintain some contact with her even today. But that's one that had such a profound effect on this community because that's something you wouldn't expect to happen in a community this size.
You're right. Yeah.
And the defendant in that case, John Wesley Frazier, we tried to get a death penalty case on that, but he had never been in trouble with the law before, never been caught, I guess is a better way to say it. And so we were having a very, very difficult time. In fact, it was impossible for us to get a death-qualified jury. So we ended up with a plea agreement where he was getting life imprisonment, and he passed in prison, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or something, so he's no longer a danger to anyone. But that was such a memorable case and so traumatic that it's really, really hard for me to even just recall all the details without kind of choking up, because it was just horrendous.
Recently retired Chief Dave Bailey, he told me one time that he thought that Deputy Mark would probably someday would have been the chief, that he was that gifted and was so dedicated to what he did.
He a Fairfield County kid. He was graduated from Fairfield Union. Just as you say, he was a dedicated officer, and I think Chief Bailey is correct that he very well may have been chief of the Lancaster Police Department had things not turned out the way they did. Yeah. So that was a devastating case. And the other one that I remember that's again for a different reason is the Stacy Fairchild case, and that was another one. I still remember being called out on that in February of 1989. The River Valley Mall had only been open for about a year and a half, a little over a year really, and we had Stacy had been missing, and her body was found, as you know, there in one of the tributaries to the Hocking River, and we felt that we would be able to solve it. We thought there was enough information. Her car, though, had been totally destroyed by fire, but we really felt we would be able to solve this. Well, the reason I do remember it so well is because it was nearly 20 years later that we were able to apprehend Lindy Dysart, who was responsible for Stacy's death. And of course, they were the only two there, and although he made some type of a statement, I don't think he was being totally accurate in what occurred. And he's still in prison. I imagine he'll be there for quite a long period of time, and certainly he deserves to be there. But that was we mentioned DNA last week as one of the big changes, the changes in technology, and it was technology that allowed us to figure out that it was Lindy Dysart, because for 18 years or so, he had not had any problems. He got convicted of a breaking and entering, went to prison, and fortunately, anyone who goes to prison has to have his or her fingerprints put into the CODIS system, as you know. Well, not only that, but the DNA also has to go in. After he was released and on bond, or on I guess it was judicial release or whatever it was, committed a robbery out at LA 10 on West Fair Avenue, and left blood there because he cut himself in attempting to get away. That came back to, we knew before he was actually apprehended again, we knew that whoever blood was in the robbery was the same individual. We had some DNA from the Fairchild homicide, so we knew it was the same person. We had a match, but we just didn't know who that match was. And once we found out that it was Lindy Dysart's DNA, then we were able to move forward on both the robbery at LA 10 and the homicide. And fortunately, he ended up getting convicted. He entered a guilty plea, and he's now in prison. But it was just,
so had he not left DNA behind, or he hadn't cut himself,
we would have never been able to solve it. And Dave and Becky Fairchild, two of the nicest people you would ever want to meet. Right. My heart just always went out to them, because this was so hard for them, just not knowing what happened. And I can't really tell them what really happened, because again, I don't think Lindy Dysart ever was truly truthful in what he told us. But we feel extremely confident we have the right individual in prison, and as I said, he's where he needs to be.
And I think, as you mentioned, even with the Markwood case, people do not kind of think in Fairfield County those kind of things could happen. A young girl that's working at the mall could be abducted. That just doesn't seem like anything it's so foreign to what we see because by and large, as you know, Fairfield County is a safe and secure community, and we just don't see that level of violence typically in the county.
Absolutely. This is a safe place to live. It's a great place to live, raise a family, but when something like that happens, that's why you always do remember it, because it just stands out so much from the routine. I don't want to call them routine cases. Every case is unique, but
yes.
As you know, the problems with substance abuse and the crimes that are caused because of that substance abuse, the burglaries, the robberies, the breaking and enterings, thefts. You don't remember all of those, but something like this that is so out of the ordinary, yes, you do remember, and it's just something it always stays with you.
Yeah, the connectivity between the drugs and crime, I mean, it is just, at one time we felt that probably 85% of our theft-related offenses are done by people to support drug habits.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so it's just an amazing thing. On a lighter note, I see here in the notes you had a case where someone had some pigs were associated with a criminal case, and then Judge Barron's had some involvement in that. Right.
This would have been back in the late 80s, early 90s. I really don't remember the date. I just remember that it was, in fact, it was a sheriff's case that was where I believe it was Terry Kesterson who had two pigs in the trunk of a huge Pontiac, and it was one of those things, an 80s Pontiac of some sort. And of course, he'd been stopped by deputies because, they saw that there were pigs in the trunk, and turns out the pigs were stolen, as you might imagine. But his defense was what made it memorable. His defense was that he just bought the car, and the pigs were in the trunk of the car when he purchased it. Fortunately, the jury didn't buy that, and I always did feel sorry for Judge Barron's in that case because he was the defense attorney. He was the defense attorney, okay. And his client insisted on going to trial. So he got convicted, and it actually was it was a fun case to try, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll remember that one. We're just about a minute and a half left in time. Any other cases that we can kind of talk about briefly?
Well, real briefly, the Ashley Taggart abduction here is another memorable. Fortunately, it turned out, well for her. But she wasn't far from dying, and that was one where
child was abducted, put in the attic,
in an attic on Chestnut Street,
wow.
East Chestnut. The other one, and this I believe again was a little bit before your time. No, it wasn't. It was during your when you had just become sheriff, early in your first term. Randall Miller Jr.
That's right.
Was up in a tree and assassinated his father out in Amanda.
And he was running for county commissioner at that time.
He was.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, he was running for county commissioner against Judy Shoup. Yeah, that's right.
We're just about out of time. Dave Landefeld, appreciate you spending time out, and know you're going to do a great job as a municipal court judge, and we look forward to working with you. And as always, been an icon in our county here.
Well, thank you.
Well, we're just about out of time. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week. The students here at Fairfield Christian Academy, Kelly Roberts behind the scene, our executive producer, and certainly to you, the viewers and listeners, I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Until next week, same time, same place, God bless, buckle up if you're driving, and we'll see you right here next week.
Posting isn't private. Beware what you share.